Welcome to Day 3, Horror Fam and guests. In case it's not obvious, we're bringing you the best horror stories all month long. True stories, animated tales, and even original stories written by the creator that you won't find anywhere else. It's gonna be the spookiest season ever. Tonight, we have something so special for you. A collection of creepy doll stories that will send shivers down your spine. 6 stories in total. Some are short and unsettling. One's funny. And one is actually a creepmas story written by yours truly. You won't want to miss these, so grab your blankets, turn off the lights, and get ready for a night of chills.
I always loved visiting Grandma's house, with its tall ceilings. I don't know what it's called, but you could see the first floor from the second floor by looking over a banister. I used to throw my toys over. Mostly teddy bears and other stuffed toys. But when no one was looking, I'd toss a G.I. Joe or two. Anyways, the one thing I did not like about this setup was the guest bedroom on the second floor. It sat in the center of the hall. It wasn't the room itself, but rather its sole occupant. A porcelain clown doll that my grandma said used to belong to my great-grandmother. The doll was perched on a chair, dressed in red and yellows. It was somewhat faded, but being so old, it seemed about right. It had a painted smile that stretched far too wide on its face. I was told to never touch it. For me, that wasn't a problem. I didn't want to. Let's be real. As a kid, I would say a doll is a girl's toy, but I'm old enough to admit it now. That thing scared the crap out of me. One night, my mom and grandma were talking downstairs. I got bored, but had gotten into trouble for throwing some G.I. Joes off the second floor earlier that day. So, I decided I'd explore the guest room. The clown doll was in it, and it was creepy, but I turned the light on and started looking around the room anyways. There was nothing interesting in there for a kid. Before leaving, I mockingly said, "You're not so scary," trying to sound as tough as a 7-year-old could. Suddenly, to my horror, the doll's eyes gave a slow, deliberate wink. I froze and stopped breathing. My eyes were locked on the clown. The room's temperature seemed to drop. I felt cold, icy even, but I was sweating. All at once, I must have gotten the power to move again, because I ran out of that room and slammed the door as fast as I could. My mom and grandmother came rushing over. Between the door slamming and me running down the stairs, they knew something was up. My mom noticed I was sweating and put her hands on my forehead to check me for a fever. She wanted to know what happened. I told her the clown winked at me. My grandmother very matter-of-factly told me that wasn't possible. The doll was made of porcelain. I must have imagined it. My mom did one of those classic, "It's getting late, we need to get home, he needs to go to bed." And we left. On the car ride home, my mom looked at me thoughtfully and said, "You know, when I was a kid, I thought I saw it move once too." But dolls can't wink. It's just our imaginations helping reinforce Grandma's rule to stay away from it. It's an antique. My mom's words comforted me that night in the car because it meant that we were like each other. We experienced similar things. But now as an adult, I can't help but wonder, us both seeing the same thing years apart, doesn't that increase the likelihood of it being real?
Little Sally loved her beautiful doll so much, she played with her every day. Until she ripped her head off. Now the doll plays alone. I am not obese!
It's been years since anyone's spoken about the cursed doll. That's why it would be a great time for him to strike.
It's been a long time. I'm gonna especially enjoy stabbing this goody two-shoes.
Except this time, he's at the wrong house.
Well, hey there, bud. What do you got there?
Woody, his back. He must be itching. I'll help him. Ah!
Get out of my face!
All right now, I'm sorry I had to do that, but you were gonna wake up Andy.
Chucky is back, but this time, he's the one in trouble.
Pay up.
Son of a...
Well, that could have went better.
What's this doll doing here?
And then she put this dress on me. It's not funny! Stop laughing! You know, maybe I could get you out of here. Oh, thank you. I can't take it anymore. Yeah, just take me for a walk and I'll tell you how to get out of here when we get back. But if I could take you for a walk, I'd be able to get... Oh, man. You don't have a way out, do you? You just want to go for a walk. Maybe yes, maybe no. The only way to find out is to take me for a walk.
Child's Play. Story.
What? Where am I?
This is for not saying sweet man 3 times, bitch!
Thank you kindly, Nightmare Man.
It was the day after Thanksgiving, 1986. My mom had begun her annual ritual of decorating our house for Christmas. While I excitedly watched her, the smell of apple pie and Thanksgiving leftovers perfumed the air and mingled with the fresh pine scent of the Christmas tree we had just set up in the living room. I was 8 years old then, full of wonder and excitement about the upcoming Christmas holidays. My biggest concern should have been what Santa was going to bring me. But that year my attention was divided. That was the year my mom started seeing Robert. Something about Robert was off from the get-go. He had a way of moving through our house as if he owned it, with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. His leather jacket creaked with every movement, and he had a habit of ruffling my hair as he passed by, a gesture that felt more patronizing than affectionate. The peculiar twist that year came when my mom took Evelina out of her storage. Robert's reaction was unlike anything I'd ever seen. His usual smug demeanor faltered for a moment, replaced by what looked like a flicker of... maybe fear? Or perhaps recognition. It was hard to tell. And being so long ago, my memories faded. Whatever it was, it quickly vanished, and his usual sneer returned as he remarked, "What's this? Your family plays with dolls?" I didn't think much of it at the time. Being a kid, I had always assumed that every family had their own Evelina, a strange, beautiful doll placed with reverence on the mantle for Christmas. It never occurred to me that our tradition might be unique, or that Evelina was anything more than a peculiar family heirloom. When my grandma and grandpa were with us, they always treated Evelina with a kind of reverence, saying she was a special Christmas doll meant to watch over the house. Sort of like today's elf on the shelf, but without the nightly escapades. I used to believe I'd see Evelina move. I would tell Grandpa, eyes wide with amazement, and he'd chuckle warmly, patting my head. "Of course, she's watching you, Christine. Don't you know? The name Eve means life, so Evelina means small living thing. She's very much alive in her own way." Mom would often scold him for filling my head with such ideas. "Don't lie to her, Dad," she'd say, stern look directed at Grandpa. "She's too young to understand you're playing." But Grandpa would only wink at me and whisper, "Your mom's just jealous. Evelina used to do that little twirl dance for your mom. But she doesn't do it anymore because your mom became a grumpy grump. I miss those days. Grandpa with his no-nonsense attitude and heart full of stories. He would never have put up with Robert. He had an innate detector for bullcrap, something Robert had plenty of. If Grandpa were still around, he would have either forced Robert to drop his act or shown him the door without a second thought. Caught up in my own thoughts, I didn't notice Robert's gaze fixed on Evelina. His expression, one of both fascination and unease. "Creepy little thing, isn't it?" he muttered, eyeing the doll. "Looks almost too lifelike. Like it's gonna start moving on its own." Feeling a sudden urge to defend Evelina and our family's tradition, I spoke up. "That's because her name is Evelina. It means small and full of life. She's alive. In a way. My grandpa told me." Robert paused a moment, and then let out a harsh, jarring laugh that cut through the room's holiday cheer. "Evelina? Alive? More like evil Ina, if you ask me." He coughed loudly, a mocking tone in his voice. "You people really believe in living evil dolls?" His laughter echoed around the room. My mother rushed in. "No, we don't. It's just a thing that we do," as she hurriedly pulled him out of the room. As she ushered him out, I couldn't help but notice Evelina looked different. It was the strangest thing. I can't explain it. She stood there same as before, but her eyes appeared fixated on Robert. Everything about her was the same as it ever was, but her expression. I remembered before when I'd look at her, she looked kind of happy, like when you and your friend have a secret. But now, if she had a secret, it wasn't a happy one, I'm sure of that. Tension in our house began steadily mounting as we approached Christmas, and I had noticed a distinct change in Robert's demeanor. In addition to his normal state of oddness, there was now a palpable sense of anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Strange and inconvenient things had been happening to him, and he seemed to be convinced that I was the cause. First it was his car keys. They went missing repeatedly, only to be found in the most unlikely places. Once in the freezer, another time inside my dusty old dollhouse. Robert's accusing glare would always find me, his suspicion obvious. Then there was this mysterious wine stain on his favorite white shirt. He swore he hadn't spilled a drop, and yet there it was, a large, glaring red blotch that refused to wash out. Again his eyes bore into me, filled with an unspoken accusation. But what really set him off was the inexplicable rash that appeared on his hands and neck. It looked like an allergic reaction, but nothing in our home had changed. He went to the doctor. They couldn't help him. They gave him a cream and told him it'll probably go away on its own. Robert, however, seemed to have his own theory. He would mutter under his breath, shooting me dirty looks as if I somehow concocted some sort of magic potion that somehow made jerks itchy. By Christmas Eve, Robert's patience had worn thin. His behavior towards me became more hostile, his accusations less veiled. I remember him cornering my mom in the kitchen, shouting and hissing and, "Your daughter's doing this? I don't know how, but she's trying to drive me out." My mother managed to calm him down, insisting I was innocent. Robert promised her he would catch me, and then she would have to do what parents do, or she'd be a bad mom. That night, I laid in bed, the magic of Christmas Eve overshadowed by a feeling of dread. I remember staring at the ceiling, trying to push away the unease, and wishing for Santa. Then I heard it. The sound of someone downstairs in the living room. Santa Claus? All at once my fear was replaced with curiosity and excitement. I tiptoed from my bed, my small feet pitter-pattering softly against the cold floor. Carefully, I walked down the stairs. At first I saw the silhouette of a man near the tree. I could hear him mumbling. Could Santa be checking his list? No. The voice became clearer. Robert's voice. It was unmistakable, a harsh, angry whisper that turned my blood cold. Ruining everything. It's all her doing, he said under his breath. The glow of the Christmas tree lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. Robert stood there, his back to me, his body language tense, his hands clenched at his sides. I must have made a sound, because he whirled around, his eyes wild with anger. Christine, I knew it was you! Have you come to steal my car keys? Maybe stain more of my clothes? No, maybe you have some more poison ivy or something else to give me a rash. You think you can keep playing these tricks on me? I shook my head, words failing me, terror gripping my heart. I didn't do anything, I stammered. Don't lie. His voice was a guttural growl. He stepped towards me, his hand raised. I froze, too scared to move or scream. Then a loud crash came from the kitchen. For a moment we both stood still, shocked. Robert's face twisted in confusion and rage. There's someone else here, he hissed, moving past me. Don't you move. After I handle this, you'll get what's coming to you too. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched him disappear into the kitchen. Once he was out of my sight, I ran to hide behind the Christmas tree. I could have run upstairs, but then Robert, and whoever was in the kitchen, would hear my footsteps. I peered out from the branches and looked around. That's when I noticed. Evelina was missing. She wasn't on the mantel anymore. Her glass case was open and empty. The next moments were a blur. I heard more crashes and a scream of terror. Robert's scream. Then everything went silent. The noise must have woken my mom up. She started shouting from upstairs, her voice laced with panic. But there was no reply. That's when she shouted she was calling the police. I curled up behind the Christmas tree, locking myself in using the gifts, my body trembling, my ears covered, praying for this nightmare to end. Suddenly, I could feel myself being grabbed and pulled around. I screamed and punched, thinking it was Robert, or worse. But it was the police. I heard them telling my mom they would need to call homicide, and no one could go into the kitchen. Then the officers questioned me. My mother held me close to her. Her embrace was a mix of fear and relief. I clung to her. The police officer gave me a ginger ale to help calm my nerves. As I sipped it, my eyes wandered to the mantel. Evelina was back in her place. The same, yet different. Her grin seemed wider. She seemed happy, like she used to be. Like an old friend that had a secret. I told the officers what I thought they needed to hear. About the noises, about thinking it was Santa downstairs, about Robert going to check the kitchen. They wrote everything down, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that Evelina, in her silent, sentinel way, had just protected me from something truly evil.
Who the hell watches YouTube?
All of my toys were looking at me when I entered my room. Then I realized they weren't looking at me. They were looking right behind me.
Whoa! There's drugs down here!
My name is Alma. This is the story of what happened to my husband Diego years ago. We rented an apartment in New York City. Diego and I lived on the 3rd floor. My parents lived in the apartment directly above ours. My parents had just gotten back from their vacation in Mexico. They had picked up several souvenirs. Among them were these odd little dolls. My parents seemed pretty proud of them and displayed them on a shelf in the living room. A few days later, Diego started to feel sick. We thought he would feel better in a few days, but he continued getting worse. He was always tired, his joints ached, and he started to lose his memory. It was as if he'd aged 20 years in 2 weeks. Diego's doctor thought his past just caught up to him. Diego was a wrestler in Mexico. A few nights later, Diego had a dream. Diego ran up the stairs and started to pound on my parents' door. When my parents got to the door, he told them about the dream. He told them the dolls were trying to kill him. He went to the shelf and grabbed the dolls. My parents didn't know what to do. They thought he had lost his mind. Diego took the dolls to the kitchen and turned on the stove. At this point, I thought he lost his mind too. Until, no matter how hard Diego pushed, he could not get the dolls in the fire. I couldn't believe it. He continued pushing them down and started to pray. And finally, they went into the fire. Diego made a complete recovery by the next morning.
Hey, Horror Fam! We will, of course, have more fun for you tomorrow, but I wanted to get you all ready for something truly special this Saturday night, the first Saturday night in October. We're bringing you a collection of the best haunted house stories, guaranteeing to keep you on the edge of your seat. These are some of the greatest stories we have, each one more chilling than the last, including a Best Creepypasta winner. One story in particular is by a close friend of the channel, Mike the Naked Bigfoot, who passed away on Halloween, making this tale even more haunting. As a tribute to his memory, it's going to remain untouched, including his intro. You won't want to miss it. Mark your calendars, Horror Fam. Saturday evening is going to be a night full of ghostly chills and haunted thrills. Don't miss it. So whether I see you guys tomorrow or on Saturday night, make sure you take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you all soon.